I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Charles Wallace, and welcome to the Bare Essentials podcast. As we continue on our journey to build a stronger community, I'm very excited to share with you all the Kindness Alliance, which is a unique, free of charge advertising initiative looking to support businesses that share in our core values. Each episode will look to spotlight a different member, celebrating their contributions and dedication to kindness. Would you like to get involved? Just visit the Kindness Alliance section on our website, www.thebareessentialspodcast.com, or just send me a message. And now, a huge thank you to this week's Kindness Alliance member.
Hi, Joel Maurer, founder of Dink Ninjas. Dink Ninjas was dreamed up and started right here in Austin, Texas, a dynamic pickleball community. We arm pickleballers with the paddles, apparel, and accessories to dink like a ninja. Dink Ninjas is dedicated to supporting mental health awareness and cancer research. Shop our full lineup at dinkninjas.com.
Hi, Marcus. How you doing? Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Charles.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. I seen some of the stuff that you do, you're involved in, and I thought you would be a perfect guest for, well, definitely selfishly, a lot of the things that I'm into. So, and I think a lot of the things that people who watch the show and listen to the show are into also. So I couldn't wait to have you on here. With that being said, would you mind doing a brief introduction of yourself?
Thanks. So first of all, thank you. And when you approached me, I was super humbled that you wanted me on your show. So that's cool. Yeah, my name is Markus, and I'm a fitness and wellness coach to entrepreneurs. I do that for almost 8 years now. And I came to that because of my own journey. I was a project manager in the automotive industry, and I burned out in 2016. Then I traveled around the globe backpacking for an entire year, and that changed my mind completely, and sort of how I viewed the world, how I viewed my health, my well-being. I learned about yoga and mindfulness, and when I returned, I became a yoga teacher. And since then, I'm discovering and getting involved in all sorts, what I call holistic fitness, which is like everything revolving around body, mind, but also emotional and spiritual fitness. So that's the brief version.
That's fantastic, though, and you're a pro at this podcasting stuff. Great intro. I wanted to touch on as the first topic some things about emotional management. So maybe let's start there. Can you share a personal story where managing your own emotions was really crucial to your success and your own well-being?
I think there's so many over the past couple of years. But I think like the longest journey for me was getting rid of all my injuries. And that was like after the burnout, the number one reason why I got into yoga, because I had the hope to sort of heal myself physically. But yeah, like were severe injuries, especially around the hip and hip flexors, and nobody couldn't really help me with that. So I dove really deep into all that topics. and for, I think, almost the past 4 years, it's been an up and down, back and forth, good days, bad days. So this is the most challenging part, and to not get upset and keep on going day after day after day, that can be really challenging if it's if it's constant pain, if it's sleepless nights because of pain. And I thought I had left that behind after burnout, but no, it's still a challenge. And now I can luckily say I probably resolved 99% of it. So yeah, but it's still going on. It's always a back and forth. I think since I have like a couple of old injuries, like broken bones that caused some imbalances, that will never be like a balance in a normal person that never had anything before.
It's interesting. You touch about when you talk about that, you touch about, to me, when I mention emotions to you, you really go into your physical and your mental and your emotional, the whole mind, body, spirit. I see already like the connections you start to put together there. Markus, how important do you think all three of those are in connection with each other to really help with the whole self?
So I think it all starts in the mind. So our mind is the most powerful place we have in ourselves. And then, of course, in the end, if thoughts are not helpful, it affects emotions and ultimately probably also manifests in the body somehow. At least that's what I know from Eastern cultures, like yoga and also traditional Chinese medicine goes into that stuff. Yeah, so that's why I think everything is connected. But I also saw in myself and others that you can work it also in the other direction. So you start with the physical, and then you can touch on the emotional and the mental parts and the mindset. Because once you start with your body and you do it in a mindful way where you sense what's going on while you do stuff. So that's basically what I come from, or came from yoga practice, where you try to align in certain asanas, so the postures, and you want to be in a certain alignment, so you have to be careful and attentional about how to move your body. So you try always to sense with like the inward facing interoception, to really, yeah, feel what's going on inside while you do other stuff. And I think that translates over to you become more mindful in general, because then you start noticing other things. So probably it's how you talk to yourself, how you feel when you are with others. So with oneself, it's not that challenging, but as soon as you are around other people who challenge you in one way or another, then you realize certain things.
That's really interesting. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about my own, we touched a little bit before we started, my own journey as far as getting well, I'll say. But it's, yeah, I can definitely see, I didn't know it at the time, but now being through it and listening to you talk about it, it really hits home even more. You started to mention there a little bit about self. I wanted to touch a little bit on, because I think this is really important. And when I have guests on, I really like to look at people and really talk about their authentic self. So for you, were there challenges that you faced on your own journey to finding that authentic self? How did you overcome those types of challenges?
It depends on how you define the authentic self. So I define it as if you peel away all the mental layers and all that societal and cultural and childhood programming, then you at some point get down to who you really are. And that basically comes down to your interests that you're drawn to, yeah, your values. Of course, there's always some sort of programming, but and some influence, but that's how I define it. So I go for what I like. That's my authentic self. And it's a journey, I think, and overcoming challenges. Basically, I think that the real journey is getting back from our mind back to our heart. That's the longest journey, and I think that lasts a lifetime. And yeah, that's the biggest challenge. And I think, yeah, the authentic self-love, I think that's probably what the most authentic part of us, of our self could be. And yeah, it's clouded by self-hatred, by negative self-talk and all that stuff. And that's also challenging for me, and it's been challenging in my past, and it's still some sort of challenge on the bad days. On good days, I don't really recognize it, but on the bad days, can get tough.
I definitely can relate to that. I think it's always each day is a different day, and it's a different, I'll say I feel like there's an internal competition going on inside us every day for ourself. And it's the voice here and the voice there, and it depends which one's going to win the day. When you mentioned, they're interesting to me, you mentioned self-love. I was thinking about this when it comes to, how do you handle when it comes to prioritizing your own self, your own self-love and well-being, if it will ultimately maybe hinder or, put you at odds with someone else? How do you prioritize yourself and your own well-being?
So it's become a practice over the years. So I try to fill my own cup first thing in the morning. So I do my morning exercise, I drink a glass of water, and that's my me time. So even if I work together with my girlfriend, Ketty, and we work out and exercise together, or we do yoga together, but it's still my me time. So it's just like an hour in the morning, taking in some sunlight outdoors, ideally. And yeah, then I'm ready for the day, but I need that. And I tried a couple of other things before, morning routine stuff like journaling and meditations, like formal meditation. But since all of my movement practice became sort of a mindful practice where I focus mostly inward, without any music, without any distractions. So just like me and movement and exercise or whatever I prefer on that day. I don't need much more. So that's it.
So I'd love to ask you this then. When you mention about, I always struggle with the quiet. I feel like the quiet, for some reason, it really gets my mind going, and it makes it harder for me to relax. How do you really make that time count as far as that introspection in the quiet? Because I feel like for me, the more quiet it is, the more, believe it or not, for me, the more quiet it is, I feel like I'm more distracted.
Yeah, I feel that. I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine the other day. And then because like if you're already involved in that and you don't notice it anymore, then it's your new normal. But of course, I remember those times where I couldn't sit still for more than a minute because like everything was hurting, and then you're distracted, and also your thoughts distract you. And yeah, like to compare that feeling, I always try to relate to what people already know. So for me, it's diving is a good thing, or surfing, because you're so outward focused on a certain point that you don't think. So you're so involved in the moment that you don't think. So for diving, for example, you're so focused on your breath. And if it's not your breath, so you're not focusing inward, then it's just like admiring the beautiful fish and the corals and whatever's going on outside. With surfing, it's similar. So you focus so much on the horizon to spot the next wave that you don't think. And I think people know that feeling in some sort. It could be also for cooking. Like if you're so focused on one thing and you don't think anymore. So it's just like that's being you in the present moment. And the same could happen if you focus just on your breath. So you would just watch the breath without thought. But usually there is always this mind chatter in the background. So especially in the beginning, so you're not sure if you're doing it right. So you ask yourself, so is this it? Am I doing it right, or do I miss something? But that's already the practice, and most people don't notice that. So it's always bringing your attention back to the present moment, to the breath, for example. That's like every time flexing your mental muscle and bringing yourself back into the present. That's the practice, and it's not more and not less than that.
It's definitely something that I'm conscious of it now. I'll admit it. I need to get better at it. And as you know, again, one of the reasons why I love speaking to people like yourself, it helps expand my own horizons, which in turn I think helps expand a lot of folks who watch and listen their horizons also. When I was preparing for the interview, I saw for you a lot about, holistic fitness. And the term that came to mind that I saw was beyond movement. So I know you touched on it a little bit, but can you explain that whole concept behind movement and how it really integrates the whole physical activity, the mental, and the emotional health?
Yeah, I struggled for quite a long time to define what that is, but I call that beyond movement because for me it goes beyond movement. So it's not only movement, it's also like the mindfulness part. So that's the essence of it. But on the other hand, for me, that's just a container word for whatever practice I do. And over the past couple of years, I tried a lot of stuff on my journey, from like recovering from those past injuries. So yoga is one part, but I don't practice yoga that much anymore. So I kept the mindfulness of yoga more or less, and I like the slow practices as well. Then I expanded into calisthenics because I was missing the hanging and the pulling part, because yoga is just on the floor. Then I touched on everything related to functional training and fascia, which is like a basic tissue that's functional for the body and for the movement. And then there is all this rehab and prehab stuff I adopted from other practices. And yeah, so like what I see it as a toolbox. So beyond movement for me is more a toolbox than anything else. So whatever I need to work on certain goals for myself, but also with clients, I have a vast of practices to touch on and to apply.
I love the
And
phrase toolbox.
yeah, cool.
Yeah,
And how it translates into like emotional and mental fitness is more or less the mindfulness part behind it. So it's always this checking within. So for exercise and strength training, it could be what people call the mind to muscle. connection. So you really focus inside what's going on, how you work out, how you move. So in the end, it's more about movement than about exercising and training. I think of it more of a movement practice than of exercising or strength training.
So obviously, seeing what you do, just seeing you, you're obviously a very fit person. So I kind of wanted to ask you this for people, like myself, a little bit older, my 50s now. I know it was in my younger years when I would, work out even, how do you balance? I think a lot of people today are always looking at, in order to be in shape, you're really looking at pushing and I'll say it, punishing your body. And that's the way people approach it. I feel like your approach is a lot different than that. Could you touch on that a little bit?
So last winter was the first time, like December to January, probably, when I visited the gym after long years of not having been into a gym. And what I see people doing is usually they work muscles, and I always think about joints more. So that's why I think of movement, because like whatever you do in terms of movement, it's always your whole body is involved. So even if you do a biceps curl, then you usually should tense the whole body and not only your upper arm. And yeah, it's I could go really deep here. That's why I try to keep it short. So my whole approach is basically coming from this rehab journey. So there is like a framework I use, which is pain, weakness, tension, and instability, which are all connected. And if you have some sort of pain in the body, then it causes weakness. And that weakness causes instability. And in the end, it results in tension because the body needs to compensate somehow. And that's why I always try to teach people a weakness first approach. So you focus more on the weakness and you try to resolve that, and that's where you go. So most people try to push harder where they already are strong. So especially guys, we usually love the bench press, and we put on more weight and more weight and more weight. Or if it's like leg day, if guys like leg days, then they do the squats and they put on as much weight as possible, even if it's not healthy for the knees. But I try to work more with exactly that weakness and instability approach. So I try to focus on those points where I feel the most tension, where I feel instability, where I feel weakness, where I feel pain. And pain, not in a sense of stinging pain, because that's usually unhealthy, but in a sort of, okay, this is bearable, and I can go there and I can explore. So it's more about the exploration part where you need to work on, because then you get stronger. If you resolve the weaknesses, then you usually also balance out the body in a whole. And that's the holistic thought behind that as well.
Yeah, that as you were describing all that, you mentioned joints. I recently, probably the last probably 4 or 5 months, I've been training more using resistance bands as opposed to weights. And I have actually noticed a big difference in my overall, just how I feel in general. It definitely, and I think a lot of what you described, I'll admit it, I was definitely part of that. I was looking to see how much I could lift, and it meant a lot to me, that number of weight. So I think it was getting my mind straight that I just needed to be healthy. And I was fascinated by your approach. And I think a lot of people, especially people that are getting a little older, need to think more about just feeling good and feeling healthy. And I think you're doing a good a good job with that. Um, let's talk a little bit about sleep and recovery. I think it's things that, I know for me that I never really considered much at all, especially when I was
Mm.
younger. I thought sleep was just something that happened because I couldn't do anything more. And recovery to me was about weakness. How antiquated was that theory for me, right? It wasn't the smartest, but what types of practices do you recommend to your clients, Marcus, to help enhance their sleep and, the importance of that recovery?
Yeah, like what I love to like it's the athlete's principle. So you work hard and you recover hard. So at the same pace and
Mm.
at the same amount. So for like sleep is a big part of that recovery, but rest in general is also important. And rest is not just sleep. So rest could also be like a walk in nature, could be a stretching session, could be foam rolling, whatever is light on the body. So it's not like another heat training. That's not recovery. So what relaxes the body and the mind in some sort. And for sleep, mm, I have to admit that I still have my problems with sleeping because I have usually a very active mind. And what I noticed over the years, especially in terms of training, so that's why I shifted also my exercising routine to the morning, because I realized that if I train in the afternoon after 4, 5 o'clock after work, then and if it's a hard training, then that usually messes up my sleep. So I have a hard time calming down, also like in a physical sense. So adrenaline is high, dopamine is high, and that usually doesn't really help. So what I recommend is always is exactly for that. So don't hit another dopamine spike. So fingers away from social media and no screen, you know, all that stuff. But it goes beyond that. So it's more or less like a whatever calms your mind and your body down. So that said, um, calm breathing is a good thing. Yin yoga, which is more like a relaxed practice of yoga, nothing exhausting, more like long holds, long stretches, everything that relaxes. Could also be a bath if you're into that, but not a cold plunge. So nothing extreme, everything that relaxes the body. And for if I have a really hard time falling asleep, then um, I know that from Yoga Nidra, which is like more or less a zooming out practice. So you start from within with like a body scan, and then you draw your mind further and further away from yourself. So you imagine yourself lying on the bed, watching yourself from above, from the ceiling. Then you go even further out, you zoom out, you watch the house or the apartment from above. And then you go up in the sky and the space, and then you go further and further away. And usually that is when you just fall asleep. It's not 100%, but most of the time, if people are too inward focused, this helps to get the mind out of the body. Reading could also help, but like not on a device usually.
That's interesting what you were just saying there. It just brought me back to the old, when you're kids, they talk about when you can't fall asleep, count sheep. And I was thinking as you were talking about that of the whole concept of what you were describing, but I think it goes back to, things I heard my, grandparents would even say, oh, just count sheep. It'll help. Like, okay, that's really, really interesting. So we didn't touch on this yet, and for me, again, especially getting older, it's something I was never really paying attention to, but not my diet. But now,
Mm.
not just diet of eating a lot or a lot of food or junk food, but I'm finding more and more, I think it's a huge problem, especially here in the United States, Marcus, the whole our food and inflammation. I think inflammation is probably was a huge issue for me, probably still is. Any tips on the diet and some anti-inflammatory foods that you would suggest, or things that you eat?
The thing is, my girlfriend is the nutrition coach, and she's the expert on that. So that's not my expertise. I just can tell what we usually eat, so we try to keep it as simple as possible. So she's from Sicily, Italy, so we kind of stick to a Mediterranean diet, which is basically in the old way, local, seasonal, and what people usually call single ingredient. So not processed, but a lot of vegetables. We rarely eat meat. We're not vegan or vegetarian because I hate labels. So I would never call myself anything. I just prefer to not eat much meat. I think if it comes to once or twice a year, then that's much. I love fish and seafood. So yeah, basically I try to keep it as simple as possible. So usually most of our meals don't have more than 5 ingredients. So it's usually some sort of veggies, then it's some sort of protein, which could be eggs, could be legumes, could be tofu, could be fish, and then sort of fat, which is also avocado, for example, is a good source of fat. Yeah, just that.
Yeah, you end it with one of my favorite things that I've only discovered probably in the last 3 years, and that's avocados. I definitely that's something that's been a staple for me lately. Um, I I got to tell you, it's interesting to me when you mentioned when I think about Italy, and you mentioned that your girlfriend's from Italy and she's a nutritionist. As soon as I hear Italian, I start thinking pizza and all that stuff. So that actually was definitely, I didn't expect that, and that's really really cool. And kudos to her for that. Um, Marcus, one of the things that the podcast I talk a lot with guests, and it's important to me too, is our mental health and
Hmm.
resilience. How do you, especially with clients, I feel like for what you do, there's probably a lot to do with not just about their physical well-being, but you almost have to become the mental type coach and really almost their sounding board sometimes. How do you handle, mental challenges for your not just yourself, but also for any of your clients? How do you help them with that?
So what we see and experience is that most of our clients have some sort of topic, let's call it, or issue with stress, which is like very dangerous if it's long-term and chronic stress. So our society and our whole system is designed to stress us out in some sort. And yeah, so it always depends on the root cause if someone experiences stress in one way or the other. So for one could be like the pressure at work could be stress, but also like kids at home could be stress. But then for others, exactly the same thing is also stressful, but it fuels them. So it's a lot on the perspective in the first place. And I realized that for myself as well. So if I'm already under pressure because of some deadline or some sort, then I'm more irritable, of course, than on other times. But then what I try to do with my clients is breath work, because like the breath is the easiest tool you always carry with you wherever you go, wherever you are. So calm, deep breathing is one of the first things, and it helps a lot with anxiety, with panic attacks. So there's like this practice of box breathing, which is also holding your breath. So breath holds could be also a practice to cope with mental issues, because it forces you to stress yourself in a secure way. So you always have under control when you release your breath and you inhale again. So those practices build resilience. So the cold plunge thing also builds resilience in some sort, because it is a mental challenge, but it's secure. That's why usually everything that is not immediate in terms of challenge usually helps to build resilience in some sort. So every challenge you go through, but in a controlled environment, in a controlled circumstance, helps build resilience. That's why I also believe exercise is very helpful for that. So you also build resilience while you train your body.
Yeah, I think you know, and I'll speak for myself here, but yeah, I think that's the things you mentioned about building resilience. I think that's for me, and I think for a lot of people, that was probably, you know, for me, it definitely was my biggest issue. I didn't want resilience. I wanted give me the comfort and everything that makes me comfortable. And yeah, I think more people, we really need people like you and to help us get our minds and our bodies into a place where we can look to be healthy physically, in turn help us be more mentally sound and want to do hard things and build resilience. I wanted to kind of end with this, Markus, and speaking with you, and again doing some of the research and preparing. You definitely are to me, a very mindful individual. So I thought this would be a cool question to end with. So let's talk a little bit about your legacy and your impact. What type of message would you want for future generations to remember about not only yourself, but about your principles, and how would you hope that that contributes to shape the future?
Interesting question. Before I started all that, from my experience backpacking around the globe, I saw, of course, a lot of things which are environmental issues. And I always had the feeling that when we talk about climate change, we sort of miss the point, because we won't change any of that. So if we just leave the planet and the nature to by itself, it heals itself. So it's that system. And what we don't realize, or what most people don't realize yet, is that our own health is very much impacted from what we do to the planet. So our food systems, the environment, everything, also temperature rising and all that stuff. That, of course, it impacts the nature and stuff, but in the end, it impacts us. And why I wanted to do that with the Energy Lab and all that awareness and mindfulness stuff is because I believe that it's so much linked. And if we manage to change our behavior and make it about health in general, then we impact not only our own health, but also the health of others. So we become the beacon for others. And at the same time, we do something good, because the more we realize what's not good for us, the more we will pay attention to also what's not good for the planet. That's my firm belief. If we go down to a regular diet and not processed food, so we become more natural and more reconnected to what nature originally is, and we're part of that. We somehow forget that most of the time because we live in cities, but we're part of nature. So we're not above, we're not beyond that. And my hope is that future generations more fight for health than fight for climate change. Because in the end, it's impacting also climate change if we manage to bring it to an individual level. So if everyone starts from themselves, and usually that starts with health, putting yourself first, it's not egoistic, it's not self-centered, it's like other-centered in the end.
Like I said, I really think you're putting really good energy out there into the world. And that was one of the biggest reasons I want to have you on. It's been absolutely a pleasure to speak to you. I really appreciated hearing your insights. I think they were poignant and just well thought out. And I thank you for that. Just give you a chance here to, where can people connect with you, see what else you have going on? Any places you want to have them take a look to see more about you?
Yeah, so my main channel is LinkedIn. So, and people can find me at Markus Kneissl, Kneiss. Then our website is theenergylab.co. And we're slowly growing a YouTube channel, which is also called The Energy Lab. But it's still in the baby shoes and in an experimenting phase. But yeah, we're happy for everyone who follows our journey and connects with us.
Fantastic. And I'll be sure to put that into the show notes so people can easily connect. Well, listen, Markus, it's been great connecting with you. I really am grateful and thankful that you agreed to do this. And I just, some days for me, I feel so lucky to be able to connect with people like you all over the world. It's fantastic. And I personally get a lot out of it. And I think that the audience gets a lot out of the guest, what the guests have to say in their story. So thanks for that. Thanks for being a part of this, Markus. Everyone, thanks for listening. I really appreciate your support. Please check out Markus and what he has going on. It's important and it's valuable information. Thanks again, Markus. You take care.
Thank you, Charles.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.